Hey guys, this is the Diesel Queen here with Overhauled. I am here with Josh Taylor today. He is from Canada. Josh, why don't you introduce yourself, where you come from, what you're doing, your history in the industry, so on.
Thanks, Melissa. I appreciate you and Diesel Laptops having me on the show. I really do appreciate it. Yes, I am Canadian. I am from America's biggest national park. Right now, we're in the midst of winter, so it's snowing all the time out here. We do not necessarily live in igloos, but I digress. It's a little bit about me. I started in this industry in automotive roughly in 2001 as an apprentice up here north. We have a whole system, and I won't go into detail, but I did my apprenticeship, did school, got my 310S license, allows me to work on anything under 6,000 pounds diesel, as well as cars, trucks, SUVs, so on and so forth. Worked on the bench, flat rate, came off the bench, worked as an advisor, got the opportunity to work at a Benz store, at a high volume bed store, warranty admin, and so on and so forth. It was interesting seeing $1 million a month go through the shop. Got to work as a fixed operations manager, as well as general manager at a collision center. And some time has passed. Got to do some creative stuff with mobile repair on forklifts and so forth. And since then, been coming up with different things. Primarily going back for my second license, so I'm doing my motorcycle repair license now. As well as trying to help mechanics everywhere be happier and more productive in their day with Wrench Turners Online.
So what exactly is Wrench Turners Online? How are you helping mechanics? Explain that a little bit.
So Wrench Turners Online is and more specifically, the Wrench Turners Wellness Survey is a survey for both service leaders and for mechanics derived to improve the mechanics' well-being in their environment. So whether it's performance-based, trust, shop, environment, tools, we find a way to highlight areas the service leader can correct without actually having to speak with the mechanics. Because we all know that shop meetings usually have someone standing at the front of the room talking at us, asking questions that none of us want to raise our hand to or answer. So the survey allows a service leader to provide to the shop. The shop anonymously responds to the survey, so there's no fear of reprisal. So you guys get to voice your opinions, voice your concerns, so on and so forth. And then your automotive service leader gets to make some corrections and help you guys out.
We hope. That's cool though. That's cool. I've worked at a shop before that had we had a suggestion box, which our boss thought was a great idea at the time. And you could put it in anonymously or put your name on it. It didn't really matter. It really turned into more of I took a picture of someone doing stupid and printed it out and put it in the box and then said, hey, we're mechanics, right? Sometimes we don't take things seriously. But there was some good things that came from it too, because there is sometimes a lack of communication in between mechanics and service advisors and the foremans. There's a whole chain of command there, and sometimes the communication is not great. Every now and then you get a shop that's pretty good with communication, but I think that's a great idea to have a form of anonymous communication because the root of a lot of these issues is service managers and shops are trying to find a way to keep their mechanics, right? Because it's hard enough to get mechanics as it is, let alone keeping them. You know, a lot of mechanics, their life expectancy in a shop is not more than 3 years. You know, a lot of mechanics, especially in this industry and especially in this time where you can walk down the street and not only start at a new shop, but probably get $1 an hour raise on top of what you were getting paid. It's hard for mechanics to have, at least from what I've seen in my experience, it's hard for mechanics to have the dedication to stay in one place, especially if there's problems with, management, lack of communication. They don't feel like they're getting what they need from their shop. They don't feel like they're valued. They can go down the street and get a raise yesterday at 8 other shops because everybody needs mechanics. So there's a big struggle right now with service managers trying to figure out, okay, how can we keep mechanics happy enough to stay, but also keep our production up and keep our work up, right? And keep customers happy at the same time. So what have you learned from running this site? What's the biggest complaint that mechanics usually have?
So right now there is no one biggest complaint, because each shop that has submitted information has each had, and I call it the shop life 20. So there's 20 questions that are contextually for the shop, whether it's environment or trust or so forth. Each shop has had a different priority. So all of the questions are graded, and the mechanic gets to choose 0 to 3. Obviously, strongly disagree with the question or strongly agree with the question, and I rank them. So from least priority to the highest priority. Each shop has had a different mix, had a different priority for a different reason. And I've had the opportunity to look at some of that data, and I get to review based on the number of years in service, the number of trade certificates they necessarily have, or training that they have, or ASE certifications that they have, the hours they produce, they submit as well. And whilst some trends you can expect, meaning those that make the most money are the most experienced and most well-trained, but not always the case. Conversely, you look at the bottom end of the scale, the ones that you expect to be the least productive and making the least amount of money, you expect to be the least experienced and the least trained. Not always the case. You always have outliers. Mm-hmm. But the big ones that seem to come up that not everybody necessarily thinks of, in one circumstance, and this is a layer on, I'm glad you brought up happy in there. The last part of the survey is about happiness. Yeah. Asking questions about their life, and then be able to lay over contextually who's experienced based on what their happiness level is based on their experience, what their happiness level is based on shop productivity, what their happiness level is based on specific questions within the survey. So I'll give you an example. Of those that are surveyed, only 16% of the mechanics reported that they've been in the trade for 16 years or more. That leads to that leads to your previous statement that, leaving the trade, after a short period of time. 41%, only 41% report that they can perform their best in the shop. 53% are changing jobs every 18 to 24 months.
Yep.
So these areas should really elicit a really big response from service leaders. Like, maybe I shouldn't necessarily change something in the shop that I want to change, that I think I should change, that I think is wrong. This is where those shop meetings and those suggestion boxes come into play, where it's like, let's ask. Well, bringing back the fact that most of us don't want to answer because we don't, maybe I'll get fired if I tell him that he doesn't know what he's doing.
Or you think it's pointless. There's some shops where you have that atmosphere where everybody's been preaching about how shit needs to change, and they don't like this and they don't like that, and nothing ever changes. And then they're like, well, it's not worth it.
Right. And it's the reason, the biggest reason why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. And the reason why the wellness survey got created is earlier on in this year, I read an article. Now it's a little bit old. It's 2016, but I read an article posted by the CDC in America, and the article is about suicides by profession. And in 2016, there was 38,000 suicides. And filtering by profession, in the top 5 spot was male mechanics.
Really?
So that pivoted me from trying to think about, how can we make automotive service shops more productive and more, make more money and stuff. Yes, that's fundamentally what the survey is going to get output. But my focus is on the mental and physical well-being of the mechanics in the shop.
Well, if your employees are happy, they'll take care of your company, right? They'll want to try.
More specifically, I want to see if I can find a way to help those that are on the bottom end of that happiness scale. Yeah. Because if the scale itself is at a 35, and it's 5 questions. I want to help those that are answering 5 out of 35. I want to make their lives better. I want them to be happy, because that's no way to live, regardless of what profession that we're in. That's no way to live. If I can help them in some way, if I can help their service leader improve their environment, so that 5 goes to a 10, or that 5 goes to a 15, or that 5 goes to a 20, so they're happy. A, they're happy and I'm helping somebody. But B, now they're better at what they do. They're more confident at what they do. They're producing more, which then in terms makes them more happy, because if they can pay their bills, they're happier. If they can support their family, they're happier. So it's a inverted thought. Stop thinking about the money, start helping the people. And when you start helping the people start making the money.
Yep. I agree with that statement wholeheartedly. And you're right. There's some shops you work in where there's always a few guys, right, that are just always happy to be there. And everybody's like, how the fuck can you do that? We're working Saturdays, bro. How are you happy? How are you this happy to be at work? And it's not like, they've got families. They've got, all the normal people shit. And, I used to work with this guy at one of the shops in Wyoming named Johnny. And he was one of my favorite coworkers ever. Just because his aura was just happy and positive. And he was always joking, and it is. And having somebody like that in the shop changes like the entire, and he would come down from a different shop to help us when we were slow. And I always looked forward to having him come down, because every time he came down, everybody's happiness went up a little bit. Everybody's attitude was better. And it's not like he was leading us or doing anything. He was just a field mechanic that was down to help everybody and help us. And he was one of my favorite mechanics to work with, just because he's just one of those people that's always happy. But you go into work in shops where there's not that. The service managers are pissed off. The mechanics are pissed off. The foreman is pissed off. The service writers are pissed off. You can feel it. You walk in and everybody just seems pissed off. And especially in this trade, in the trades, it's so hard to you have to deal with a lot of bullshit. A lot. Whether, between customers, and machines are not a walk in the park to try and fix. They're not a walk in the park to diagnose all the time. So you're having to deal with a lot of mental capacity at the same time. Is there a correlation between the years of experience and the general happiness of mechanics?
As an average, the average is low. So if you take a synopsis of every mechanic that's responded to the survey thus far, the average is neutral or lower.
For everybody, there is no correlation.
If you look at the average, the average is that it's dissatisfied or neutral on the happiness scale. If you want to pick apart the subsects of top bottom experience, on average, those who are low on the experience scale are not happy. And those who are high on the experience scale are happy. But again, it's not always the case. So only 13% of the high producer, high performer experienced folk are reporting that they're happy.
Yeah.
So every section has little pieces that you have to kind of try and fill in the gaps. Okay, so that's where you compare. How does the shop environment look? How do the shop tools look? How does the shop trust look? Each shop is going to be a little bit different. How much they weight trust, how much they weight performance, how much they weight on advisors and so forth. And then you layer that with the happiness. Okay, so, and this is where the sections of data and how you stack them matters. So when you pull information from someone who's got 25 years in the trade, who has 16 or more ASE certifications, who has doctor of the house of that brand, you should listen to that person. What they have to say matters. So when they rank the service advisors 0 out of 3, the likelihood that you have good service writers is low. That's a genuine answer, especially if they are still high producing. And this is where you can then look at, okay, I get the opportunity to look at it. You get high production, high base labor pay, high trade training, high certification, lots of years in, and they're doing all that, and they still have crap advisors. That's a problem. You can imagine how much better that entire shop would be if you look at service advisors first, or how the communication works. Conversely, if you've got somebody who's got a year in the trade or 2 years in the trade and says the service advisor's fuck, you don't necessarily want to weight that as important. But when everybody in the shop rates the service advisors a 0 or a 1, you can take that into account as well.
Yeah.
So it's a stacking of data that you can compile. Okay, this makes sense. This makes sense. This makes sense. Okay, this is the area that Mr. or Mrs. Service Advisor or Mr. or Mrs. Service Manager should look at. These are the top 3 or top 2 things that they need right now to repair in the shop.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, shop dynamics are a very complex thing, as I'm sure you've learned. And like you just said earlier, every shop is different. In the shops that I worked at, we used to joke about like when you would get a new apprentice in and they were like full of life, we would call it, like a new mechanic's like full of life. Yeah. And we would always joke about it. It's like, give him 3 years. All that hopes and dreams will be crushed into the dirt. But we used to joke about it because we're like, oh, the industry's going to crush that right out of him, And it's funny because I was in the industry for 7 years. And so I went through that entire scale of just starting out, fresh out of trade school, don't know shit, to I had like 7 John Deere capstones and was one of the highest paid techs in the shop of the last 2 or 3 shops I worked in. One of not the. I was never like this. I bounced back and forth with another mechanic usually on who was higher, I guess. It depended on the shop dynamic because there's also been shops I've worked in that I'm just not fucking happy in. And it's really, really hard to produce. Like you were saying, it's hard to want to produce and perform when you're not happy. And I was going through a lot of, I've had personal things affect my work. That's another whole nother thing. Like, how well can this person separate personal life from work life? I am not very good at that. I will be the first to admit that. But I went through that whole stage. And I remember when I was starting in this industry, the first day I walked into that John Deere dealership and I started working on cranes, I worked like 110, 120 hour paychecks for the first few months. And I just thought that was the most badass thing ever. I felt like a badass. I was so excited to be there. I wanted to be there. I was having so much fun. Like the fucking tires are bigger than me. And I'm like all over that shit because I'm working on cranes and I'm so excited and I loved it. And I would work any overtime that was available for the first 2-3 years of my career. I wanted to be there so bad. And I still love what I do, but it's funny how it changes over time from that young and dumb version of myself to now, one of the big reasons that I exited the industry for diesel laptops was because in the area that I'm living at now, you cannot find a shop, a John Deere. I wanted to stay with John Deere because I have 7 years invested in John Deere. I couldn't find a shop that doesn't work Saturdays. And I don't, I struggle with wanting to give up 6 out of the 7 days of my week. 2-day weekend is a healthy thing. And I understand that there's production, there's making money. John Deere requires their ag dealerships to be open on Saturdays for the lawnmower people. But it's still disheartening. Nobody wants to be there on fucking Saturday, except for the young kid that started 2 weeks ago that's super excited to prove himself. He does. But nobody else wants to be there because everybody else has family. I've got horses. I've got dogs. a fucking bed I'd like to sleep in, right? I got other things I'd rather do than be at work on Saturdays. And that was part of the reason of me exiting this industry is I'm like, I want a family and I want to run my own business and I want to start my own business and I really want to get into doing my own thing. And that's not fucking possible working 6-day weeks. Granted, it was like 5.5 days technically, but still.
As a mechanic, that's working full time, and full time is I don't even know if there's an appropriate word for full time and mechanic in the same sentence. Because for most of us, full time is all of the hours that they can give you, extra overtime, and Saturdays and Sundays if something needs to get cleaned up for most. Like that's not life. That is simply work. And most of us have gone through that for most of our lives. And I think at this particular juncture, we're seeing folks who, for lack of a better phrase, won't tolerate it anymore.
Yeah.
We've gotten ourselves, unfortunately, and I look at this from a slightly different perspective than most, I think. It's our fault. We have spent generations of time in dealerships, in independent stores, in franchise stores, and little mom and pop stores saying and feeling that this is acceptable to be treated this way. And at this point, we're seeing a decline in especially here in Canada, because it's how the apprenticeship styles works. They forecast how many registrations that they need to fulfill the journeyman end. And right now it's 10% registrations. Forget about certifications at the end. The registrations for the apprenticeship is 10% of what it needs. Forget about the registration. So nobody wants to work in this industry for a lot of reasons. It's not just the fact that many dealerships, regardless of whether it's tractors, whether it's power sports, whether it's marine or automotive, they're requiring more and giving less and wondering why folks don't want to come in. And, we're seeing a slight shift in the last 18 to 24 months where there's an opportunity to signing bonuses and there's an opportunity to make more money per hour than many folks have ever seen. There's more and more of that opportunities, and negotiation leverage is starting to occur. For example, Saturdays used to be just, that's what it was. You worked Saturdays. There was no negotiation. You didn't have negotiation of labor, your how much you were making per hour. You just came in, oh, you're starting, this is how much you're making. But nope, this is how much you're making. You're working Saturday. I'll see you, 8 to 2 on Saturdays. But I'll see you 8 to 2 on Saturdays. That's coming to a close.
Yeah.
That's going to rapidly come to a close, and not everybody wants to work Saturdays. And if you do want to work Saturdays, great. If that's for you, great. But understand that as a trade, as a profession, we have to start negotiation, not only finding good leadership, but looking at the entire package that they're offering. What am I working? What am I expected to work? What am I expected to produce? How much am I making? Is there benefits? Is there pension? Is there 401k? Am I working Sundays? Am I expected to come in? Am I specifically paying for my comebacks? Am I doing warranty at warranty time, or am I doing it at CP time and you're claiming the warranty time? Like, there is a plethora of things to negotiate when you start with a shop. And right now we have the advantage of leveraging the labor market. Now that's going to swing at some point. I expect it's going to swing the other way, right? At some point, somebody's going to get too greedy, and that's going to be enough is enough. But I don't think that we're anywhere close to that side. I don't even think we're anywhere resembling a balance between the two.
Well, there's a fine line, right? There's a fine line between, these companies, they need to make money. And to make money, they need to have the customers happy. And to have the customers happy, these customers have grown accustomed to a 6-day work week, in a sense. You know, these customers have grown accustomed to, yes, we can finish this on Saturday. Yes, we can do this on Saturday. Yes, we'll be open on Saturday. Yes, we can do this. Yes, we'll work more hours. Yes, 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 yes. And to an extent, that's kind of what you have to do to an extent, right? Because you're the customer. They're the ones who are paying you. But there's a fine line between doing that and then the mechanics that you need to be entering the industry are going like, fuck that, I'm out. So there's a fine line. Maybe you can shed some light on how to find this median between, you know, how do you find that median between, okay, I am asking way too much of my mechanics for the customer, and this is way too much, because in a sense, you need to have the industry, so we're looking for, look good in a sense to newcomers. You don't want the newcomers seeing the guy that's 25 and looks like he's 40 because he's been working enough hours to be 40 by now. You know, you don't, that's not appealing to people. You know, I grew up a lot differently than a lot of people in my generation. My father was a logger. He still outworks me. There's been very few weeks, even when I was working 110-hour paychecks, that I outworked him in hours. And he's a logger. So he's doing this as a trade, like a trade. And so I was raised around that a little bit. But there's a lot of my generation that's not. There's a lot of my generation that was raised that a 40-hour work week is a 40-hour work week. That's normal. That's what everybody expects. And then they look at this industry and they see, oh, fuck, it's not 40-hour weeks. It's 50-hour weeks plus 5 or 6 hours on Saturday.
You know?
So one of the great opportunities that I've had in the last almost year is I got turned into Service Drive Live, a meeting of fixed ops minds on Sundays. And there's been a lot of service leaders who are in the game, not consultants, not coaches or trainers, but some service leaders who are making some really big waves in how to make life work and be a mechanic. One thing that seems to be present in every amazing service drive, in every amazing service shop, is a high value leader. And we've heard you and I can almost guarantee you've heard high value man, high value woman thrown around on TikTok and LinkedIn and everything else like that.
It's a trend. Yeah.
It's a very big trendy word, but I use it as high value leader. High value leader is empathetic. High value leader listens. High value leader understands the crew that they're leading. And the last thing they want to do is put their team in a position where they can't perform. A team that can't perform is one that's overworked. A team that can't perform is one that doesn't have the right training. A team that can't perform works 15-hour days and is expected to do so. High value leaders come up with ways to make it work. Does it mean four-day work weeks and then having 2 shifts of people, 2 crews of people? So now you have overlap. So you can have the store open 7 days, not just 6. Because there will be people who choose to work the weekends because they'd rather work the weekends and have during the week off so they can spend time with the kids, get them to and from school. Is there people who want to work just during the week? Have that flexibility, and high value leaders understand that. If that's what they see can make their team work well, they're going to do that because they're listening to their team. There is no one answer to make a team work well because every team is different, every store is different, every culture is different, every encatchment area around a store is different. You can't expect Ed Roberts down at Bozard Ford in Florida to have the same kind of encatchment area with 100 techs under his purview as a gentleman up in Virginia who's got 8.
Yeah.
Not even close to the same store size. They don't have the same revenue. He doesn't have the same resources at their disposal. You don't have that at your disposal. So you have to come up with what works best as I can for the team and for the customers. So I've said this the other day. If you take care of the team will take care of the business. You take care of the customers will take care of you.
Yeah.
End of chat.
Yeah. And you bring and that's kind of what I was getting at, because, you know, I can see, as much as I'm a mechanic And I've I have a little bit of a skewed image or a biased opinion on some things because I was on the mechanic side of things. I did run a shop for about 3 months while they were trying to find a new boss. I could not get hired on there because my boyfriend at the time, my ex, was the field mechanic. So that would have been a conflict of interest. But I did run it temporarily for about 3 months. And, I tried really hard to have a good balance of used my knowledge over the course of the 7 years, or at the time it was 6 years of experience that I had in this industry to create, okay, how can I do this and not fuck it up catastrophically, right? Because I'm a mechanic. Yeah, I've been helping. I was like my boss's right-hand man, and I've been helping him this whole time. If he took days off, I took over for him for those few days. Made sure things went smoothly, tried to help him out. It was a really, really small store. So everybody had to pitch in. Everybody had to do a little bit more than what their job title was to make it work. But we all had kind of a personal I don't want to say vendetta. We all had like a personal feeling towards this shop because we were all there when it started. I set up the tool room and put away all the tools that the company had bought for us. We were there when the building wasn't even completed yet, helping doing things and finishing it up and getting it set up. And we all went through those growing pains of, dude, this shop opened and then 2 months later, COVID hit. So we all went through that, trying to build the customer basis in the first place. And then COVID hits. And then trying to make it through COVID and make it through, things getting shut down, which I was in Wyoming. Things did not get shut down the way they did in the rest of the country. But then the oil and gas crisis hit and all that shit. So we had a lot of growing pains our first year in that shop. So we all felt kind of personally responsible for the shop. So I personally cared a lot about it succeeding when I was asked to kind of take over for a few months until they hire another boss because the original boss decided to relocate. And the one thing I learned is and this is just coming from 3 months of service manager experience. Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not going to say this is 100% right, but I think one of the most important things when it comes down to customers and keeping your customers and your technicians happy is to set realistic fucking goals for your customers. Don't fucking promise. Most customers are completely fucking fine with it if you tell them, hey, this might have to wait a day. Or, hey, we're not going to make it there until late afternoon. I'm not 100% sure we will make it because he has another job, but I will let you know. I always planned an extra day in advance just to make sure we could be there when we said we were going to be there, even if other things fuck up. And what it ended up creating is, I was the only shop mechanic, unless we had other mechanics come down and help me. So I kind of was up to here, and I had to work in the shop and try to work in the office, which was challenging. And then I also had to run the field mechanics. And I learned really fast, if I schedule this, if I schedule their field calls to where they're not in a high stress situation, and then the customer is getting their expectations met because I gave a realistic date that we would be there. Not a date that of if everything goes perfectly smoothly that I jam-packed into 5 days worth of work into a day, then we'll be there today kind of thing, and it turned out really good. For the most part, I don't believe I had that many customers. I had one customer get mad because he asked me to machine down a part, and I did. They were the ones who looked at the part numbers and got us the part numbers. I machined down the part number they gave me, and it didn't show up. And I get why they were mad, right? Because they paid $500 to have this cylinder shipped from Deere. Well, this was during COVID, and this was during the whole time when the warehouses were having problems being staffed and they weren't getting parts shipped out. You couldn't stock order anything from John Deere for 8 months. You had everything you bought had to be machined down. Everything. Or they wouldn't ship it. So this part took like a fucking week. And I understand why the customer was mad. Because he paid $500 for overnight shipping and he got it in a week. It's like, well, we didn't really have a choice. So that was the only occasion I know of that they were really mad at me for. But I don't know. That's the experience that I learned was if you set the biggest key factor that I learned was setting realistic expectations for the customers on the time frame you're going to be there, how long you think the job's going to take, and how long you think it's going to take for parts. Be realistic with them.
That's a lot to unpack, but it's not at the same time. Because what you're talking about is clear, transparent, follow through communication. That's it. It is really, really complex and really, really simple all at the same time. And that's where, so far in my experience in my career, as well as the information that in the one-to-ones with mechanics that I'm doing is coming through, my opportunities to speak with service leaders is coming through. Communication is the key to just about everything. If you are clear and you are transparent to your customers, when you're whether you're a mechanic who sells the job directly to the customer, because they're in a shop like you were working in, you had direct communication with the customer, especially when you're doing it for your field techs. Or you could be talking about a service advisor communicating to the customer. Clear, transparent communication so that the customer knows what to expect. And then you follow through on what you've promised. Subsequently, when you're doing the same thing with your technicians, when you are clear and transparent with the workload, what needs to be done, so it isn't, well, am I doing an oil change on that D6, or am I just doing the finals on the D6, or what am I doing? Am I going out to Old Johnson's Road and fixing his tractor, or am I going, like, if they understand what they're going to do, clear, transparent communication, if they understand, there's no questions, there's no missed labor opportunities, they're not overwhelmed or stressed. The same thing happens in a high volume shop. You get a shop of 100 techs, individual advisors aren't necessarily talking to just one tech. They could be talking to 15 or 20 or 30 or 40 of them in the shop, because they might have that many work orders in their stack to deal with. Clear, transparent communication. And that's coming out in the survey too. Clear, transparent communication is wanted by everybody. The service leader wants it, the mechanics want it, the service advisors want it. Everybody wants to be clear so everybody can do their job. Everybody just wants to come in, do their job, and go home. Like, fundamentally, even the workaholics just want to come in and work a lot longer, and then go home.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with that. And it's the communication part. And, both of my mechanics that I had, the 3 field mechanics, I guess, that I had working underneath me at the time, one of them was like, hey, I need a little bit more overtime. Right? That's fine. The other ones were like, as long as we're getting work done, they're like, please don't schedule me till 8:00 in the fucking night. So I did. I made sure that if they were going to go do a long haul, that it was scheduled so they would leave in the fucking morning, right? Because it's Wyoming. Everything is like an hour away, at least. Everything. And in the wintertime, that can mean closed roads. That can mean you got to get, true story, one of the field technicians have had to have their field truck pulled up a hill by a dozer to get to the machine that was broken because the roads were so snowy and shitty. Things happen, right? So why try to cram 3 field jobs into a day that are all an hour away from the shop when it's probably a better idea to schedule 1, maybe 2, if they're kind of close to each other, and leave it at that. Instead of having your mechanics start the day at 6:00 in the morning because they came in early so they could get there on time, and then end up not getting home until 10:00 at night. And then the next day, you've already scheduled them for ship because you had unrealistic expectations on how long things were going to take. And I don't know. That's just my humble opinion on that. I also didn't work in a shop that was 2 months out, 4 months out. You know, I have worked in those shops, but I wasn't trying to run a shop that was 4 months out in work. So, you know, when a shop gets to the point where they're 4 months out for as far as a work line, I can understand why they're trying to push mechanics to work as many hours as they can, because they've got a huge fucking load of shit they're trying to mash down. But on the other hand, the more mechanics you push away by making them work a lot, you're not getting the mechanics into the field, right? So if you keep pushing them away, you're going to whittle your crew down to the point where it's going to actually hurt you more than it would be to just maybe cut the mechanics that already work there, cut their hours down a little bit. The ones that want it. Obviously, like you said, there's workaholics that want to be there every second of every day. By all means, go for it.
It's really, you're hitting the nail on the head with realistic expectations, and it's individualized expectations. For those who don't want to work more than their 40, 45, as a leader, I don't see any reason why that needs to be pressured. If you've got a solid C or B player that comes into work, works hard while they're at work, and goes home, that's an invaluable asset to the business. And if you try and pressurize that individual, are you actually doing them any good? Are you doing the customer any good? Not really. And to those folks who do actually find themselves in that position where they want to go to work, they want to work hard, and they want to go home, they want to make the business money, they want to make the customers happy, it's not their problem that the business itself, when you're talking about booked 4 months out, it's not their problem that you haven't been capable of hiring more staff to fulfill the need.
Yeah.
It's that clear cut and dry. It is that clear cut and dry. Because if you have staff on that team that's booked 4 months out, if you have staff on that team that's not producing, it's up to the service leader to review their performance. Is there lack of performance due to training? Is there lack of performance due to environment? Is there lack of performance due to drive? Do they want or need coaching? And if the service leader has gone through all of the steps, genuinely has gone through all the steps to try and bring them up, if they've done all those steps, why is that person still employed?
Because at this point, people need warm bodies.
Warm bodies aren't helpful. Warm bodies aren't helpful.
I agree with you.
I agree with you, but actually I've had this exact conversation with the service manager before about a very particular couple employees that worked there. And, you know, I told him, like, dude, these people can just walk in and bitch and then get a pay raise. What the fuck? Or like, dude, this person is sucking the life out of everybody. They have to have their hand held, and they've got 4 years of experience, and they still have to have their fucking hand held with everything. Everybody needs help. I'm not saying that you shouldn't help each other, but like, I asked him, I'm like, why are these people still employed? One of these, of which was like a 10-year mechanic that didn't even work 40-hour weeks. He worked like 28, 30-hour weeks because he didn't feel like being there any longer than that. Why is he here? And I made that comment to him a million times. I'm like, why the fuck is he here? Why the fuck are these people here? You know, and that's what I got told was.
Let's analyze that 28-hour technician and look at it from their lens for a second. And let's try and look at the devil's advocate side of that story. Is this individual coming to work, working, and going home?
I mean, I wouldn't use the word work to describe what he was doing. He was more like a health and safety hazard to everybody, but.
Okay. Well, let's try and be proactive, and let's try to be beneficial to somebody in this particular circumstance, like you were in, and like many shops find themselves in, with one or more of the team members that are not positive for the team. Right? Being negative about the situation isn't going to help anybody. It isn't going to help the team. It isn't going to help the service manager. It isn't going to help the parts department. It's not going to help anybody if you're not positive. Being negative about these people in the shop, carrying that negativity through the shop. We were talking at the very beginning of this conversation. You were talking about, you had somebody who was the field tech who would come in the shop and was so positive, and you could feel the energy in that shop lift when they walk through the shop. Well, the opposite's true. Do you have somebody that is horribly negative walking through the shop or in the shop all the time? They're bringing everybody down. It's up to the service leader to look at their team, look at their production, look at their happiness, look at their environment, and say, this person is not actually benefiting the team. And I'll give you a slightly different example. So a couple of years back, as a GM at a collision store, we had a gentleman who was an exceptionally high producer, made us a lot of money. He was averaging 150, 160% efficiency, like big dollars. Big dollars. He gave us 2 weeks. The owner and I were shooting bricks because this we're talking like linchpin kind of production, and he was in a linchpin area of the shop. He didn't want more money. Owner offered him more money. He was just leaving. I don't remember where he was going or why he was going, but he was leaving. 3 days after he left, the production didn't change. You're talking about an individual producing 150%. So working 8 hours, producing 12 consistently every day. 12 hours of a warm body leaving the building. And within 3 days, that production was taken over by the rest of the team.
Yeah.
That individual was hyper toxic and we didn't know. So it's important, not only as the team, but as service leaders, that you review your team with your team. Is everybody positive? Is everybody working well together? Do you trust Joe to do the transmission on that whatever?
Yeah.
Is that Allison transmission coming out and falling on the floor, or is that Allison transmission coming out and on its proper cradle?
Yeah.
Is Johnny going to blow up another head because he didn't put the valves in right? Is little Joe down in the corner who does all the alignments, is he going to forget to recalibrate the plates every single time? Is he going to clean the plates after he does an alignment after a snowfall and it's covered in salt and grease and all kinds of shit? So the next guy comes in, has to take an hour to clean them before he can do an alignment.
Yeah.
These are questions that we as the team, not just the service leaders, need to ask them. You know as well as I do that if we don't talk about this to the people that matter, to decision makers, it's not going to get fixed. I understand that there's lots of shops out there that feel like they can't, but it might as well be a waste of fucking time because they've got people and might as well be bashing their head against a concrete wall. I feel for those people. I've been in shops like that. That's no way to live.
Same.
No, it's no way to live.
And it's hard because, like I said, that conversation I had with my service manager at the time, he's like, this guy fucks a lot of shit up and he loses a lot of money and doesn't show up or whatever. There's a couple of people in this scenario. He's like, but the work they do is still making a small profit and still helps us keep our workload down a little bit. I'm like, dude, he's also creating the workload. Like, everybody fucks up, right? Everybody does. If you watch the other episodes I have on here, I'm a big preacher of the only true mistake you make is one you make twice. Everybody goes through fuck ups. The first 2 years of your career as a mechanic, you're going to feel like you fuck up everything you touch. It's just kind of how it is.
Or you're afraid to fuck up everything you touch.
Yeah. And but I've also been an advocate of you fix your own fuck ups. And when it starts to turn into the point where, like, this kid is fucking shit up and somebody else has to fix it every single time. I mean, and that's another thing I've covered in some of my podcast series is some of these apprentices and these young kids do not have the proper understanding or expectations of what this industry is. They walk into a shop with their fancy little trade school degree and they're like, I'm going to be rebuilding engines tomorrow. It's like, no, the fuck you're not. You got to prove that you can do the little shit good first before, you've got to work your way up into getting the big jobs. And it's back to your trust, the comment you just made on trust. You have to build that trust with your service managers. And a lot of it is the trust that you're actually going to try hard. You're going to try hard. You're going to read the manuals. You're going to do your best to do it correctly. You're not just going to fucking throw shit apart and throw it back together as fast as you can and not give a fuck how good it is as long as it's out the door, right? And there's a lot I've seen it a lot, and I've seen it with women too, where they walk into a shop and they're doing oil changes for 3 months and they're like, oh my God, they must hate me because all I'm doing is oil changes and it must be something against me. It's like, and no, that's how almost everybody starts. If you can't prove that you can do an oil change right, how the fuck can you expect a service manager to give you more work? And I've seen that a lot.
Even if they go to trade school, and I'm technically doing trade school again right now, and we're going back over stuff that I've touched a bit over my career, but because of the dealerships in the shops that I've been, I didn't have to do a lot of it. I did some of it. I did a lot of it on my own because I've had like almost 30 cars now, and I've had a race car, and I've modified lots of stuff, and I used to do lots of race car kinds of stuff after hours. But how often do you mic a piston?
Yeah.
Almost never. Almost never. How often are you looking at ring gap? How often are you doing those things? If I ask someone who's fresh out of trade school, other than the trade school we have up here in the north, it's a little bit different. But if fresh out of a community college, it's just trying to get somebody in the door. If you ask them, what's the piston gap? What's the piston cylinder gap clearance? What should it be? Will they know that it should be a couple tenths of a thou? And will they understand that phrase? Probably not. So going back to your service manager experience, realistic expectations. And then subsequently, mentors. Yeah. When I got to start in this trade back in 2001, I had the luxury of a mentor. There was 5 of us. There was 5 apprentices at that store. And we had a real, honest to goodness production foreman. And every week, every Tuesday, he'd hand us a work order and say, figure it out. And back then, the 5 of us would stand around whatever it was. We get out the multimeters, or we get out the gauges, or we get out whatever. And we get out another piece of paper and we write all this shit down and we test everything out and we pull out the manual and da-da-da-da-da. And the 4 or 5 of us, depending on the night, smoking cigarettes, drinking double-doubles, trying to figure out what's wrong. We'd go home like 11, 12 o'clock at night, come back the next morning and say, here, this is what's wrong. And he'd go, no. And then he'd tell us why. And he'd walk us through. We had a high-value leader. I had a mentor for like a solid almost 3 years. Many aren't getting that luxury. And it did a couple things. It did more than just teach me little bits on how to fix a car and how to diagnose stuff. I was an arrogant little shithead. I'm an arrogant asshole now still, but I'm less because of him. Yeah. I knew everything. I could fix everything. I was so arrogant, and he'd tell me every day, I need to put my boot in your ass every single day until you figure out that you don't know shit from shit. Do you know what that pile is over there? Shit. Do you know what that pile is over there? Shit. Well, one's horse shit, one's cow shit. If you don't know shit from shit, how can I trust you with an oil change? Right? So yeah. I had that. That, to me, going back to reference the survey, if such a small number, 16% of mechanics are saying that they have more than 16 years of experience in this trade, how the fuck are those young folks coming into this trade with less than 2 years experience expected to gain the knowledge of those at 25 years plus? Yeah. We're losing it. We're losing it in droves, and that's the crisis. Not just the labor shortage. We're losing our knowledge because we're pushing them away.
And you get people, once they get to their 4 to 10 year mark, that's kind of a big gap. But once you get people in around there, the numbers, I feel, people exiting the industry, trying to find something else, moving up in the shop, moving into a different position in the company, it's kind of high. Like I'm a prime example of that. I reached the point in my career where I was really proficient at the manuals. I was really proficient at a lot of things. Obviously, I'd still have struggles with some things. Obviously, I had a lot to learn still. But I reached a stage that I did not need to get my hand held. I knew how to do almost everything. And if I didn't know how to do it, I had the tools. I had the mental tools and facilities to be able to figure out how to do it. Right? Because that's what a lot of people mistake mechanics for, is they think, oh, you know how to do all this stuff. It's like, no, the fuck I don't. I know how to figure out how to do it. Right? I've been working on my boyfriend's 2015 fucking Challenger. You think I've ever touched a fucking Challenger in my life before his car? No. I've never even touched a 2-wheel drive car. Ever. Okay? I've been working at John Deere on diesels and owning diesels 3/4 ton and bigger for like my entire life. But I fucking figure it out. I have the mental ability that, sometimes I struggle and I have problems, but for the most part, I have the mental structure and the mental facilities figured out. And I think that's what makes, decent mechanics. That's really the experience. I really feel like that's a value in the experience, is it's not memorizing things. It's not memorizing specs or memorizing part numbers or memorizing exactly what manual you found this in. It's the mental tools you have to be able to figure things out. It's a mental, I don't know how else to put it, besides mental tools.
It's foundational knowledge. And
yeah,
couple of things. So like you putting in the time. So during the time where I was flat rate, to finish off the last phrase or sentence or diatribe that I was on, I had the luxury of a high value shop foreman and leader early in the trade. And it's vital for service leaders to recognize that the folks that are coming off the trade and either going to the desk or leaving the trade altogether, you need to do everything you possibly can to keep them in the trade. Give them opportunities to teach the young folk coming in, to give them a reason to stay.
Yeah.
Pure and simple.
Well, I have a little bit of a unique situation when it comes to that. For the last 2 years-ish, my own business has been thriving. I make 3 times as much sometimes a month in my own business. 30% taxes not included, but I make at least steadily double what I make in my own personal business than what I was making at work. And what I was making at work was not necessarily a small wage. Mechanics are actually getting paid fairly decently, especially compared to the rest of the world right now. And so it was, I was struggling to I couldn't find a middle ground, right? It was either leave the industry and pursue my own dreams of my own business, a family, have time to enjoy my life because I could afford it, right? Do that and get a job that, like I have, that, you try to help people. I'm trying to help service managers understand, how they can fix the technician shortage in their own shops and just share general mechanic experiences and diesel industry shit to kind of unveil this industry to maybe people that don't know that much about it. And I love the image and I love the goal that Diesel Laptops is trying to do here. And I love being a part of it. But what I don't like is there's not really another option right now for me. There's either I'm doing this and I sit at a desk, which is not my thing, but I sit at a desk and I'm not really working that much. To me, sitting at a desk is not hard work. You know, it's not mentally stimulating. It's not very taxing to me. It's either that or I work 6 days a week. Where the fuck is the in between? Like, I honestly probably would not have left the industry if I could have found a shop that would have just let me work 40 hours a week and been done. If I could work either 4 10s or 5 8s, or honestly, even if I could work 4 12s and 5 10-hour days and had my fucking weekends, I probably wouldn't have left.
And that's the thing. Many are now looking for that. You have folks like Jay Gunnan at Wrenchway. They have an entire platform for reverse lookup for technicians to try and find leaders that are looking for you. That's a big deal, because you, a top tier mechanic, should be able to find a leader. And this is where I've said it already, and I'm going to say it again. The first priority of any aspiring or existing mechanic is finding a high value leader. Nothing else matters until you find a high value leader. Because what is that high value leader going to provide you, the mechanic? They're going to provide you an environment you want to work in. They're going to provide product that you want to work on. And they're going to provide you a pay plan that suits you. And they're going to provide all of the tools and resources you need to be successful. Without a high value leader, you might get one of those, not all of them. So if somebody, for example, I'm just using Wrenchway as an example, but it's a great platform, an absolutely great platform. If you put yourself on there and you found a shop that's in California that does all the things, they might pay to relocate you if that's what you want to do. If you really want to do it.
I have people offer to relocate me all the time.
My LinkedIn inbox is full of companies trying to relocate me to work in their shop. Full of it.
And so, but the difficulty is you don't necessarily know that if you fly 5,000 miles or train all of your tools and all of your gear 5,000 miles, if they actually are a high value leader. So that's the really hard sticking point. But if you do find that high value leader, the things that you can do together.
But here's the issue here though with that is I completely agree with what you're saying. Completely, 100%. But I've worked in shops that I have had a very high value leader. They are fucking awesome. They are advocating for the shit I need. They're advocating for the shit that mechanics are asking for. They're trying their hardest to keep mechanics happy. The people above them don't give a fuck. The people above them see numbers and they're pushing on that leader that is a high value leader to get numbers. And so it's not even just like you need one leader that's high value. You need the entire company.
It needs that entire fucking ladder.
And that's like, I was so surprised when I came to Diesel Laptops because I'm so used to getting hired onto the shops, right? And they make all these promises, right? All these promises. Half of them maybe come true. You know, like I just got used to that. As an industry standard, I got used to the fact that employers are going to talk out their ass, try and get you hired on because they need mechanics. I started talking to Tyler, and this is actually the second time he tried to hire me. He tried to hire me to do this exact thing like 3 years ago. And I told him, no, I wasn't done turning wrenches. And he promised me like all this stuff. He's like, we're going to do this for you. We're going to do that for you. We're going to pay you this. We're going to get you all set up. We're going to give you everything you need to do, all the stuff we want you to do. And on top of that, we're going to try and find you sponsors for the tools for your shop that we are going to, you know, they want to have me rebuild engines for their training facilities, which I want to do. And he made all these promises and he has kept every single one of them. There has not been a single thing that he told me he was going to do that he hasn't done yet.
And
so there's no but to your statement. There's no but. So going back where you said high value leader, but the person above them, high value leader is high value leader. That includes ownership.
Yeah.
They are the leader of their business. Each person who leads parts of that team needs to be a high value leader. Doesn't matter whether it's the finance manager, the GM, the service manager, the part, they need to be high value leaders, and they all need to be high, because now those leaders, ownership up here, that's their team. Ownership should only talk to the leaders, not to the 150, 300 people, 500 people that Tyler has working for them. Tyler has knowledge of everybody that works for him. He might not know intimately well, absolutely everyone down to the nth degree, but I know he cares. As somebody who knows very little about Tyler, very, very little about Tyler, but I see what he puts on out there. I see the stuff that he's getting himself into. I see the stuff that he's trying to do and what he's doing for the community that I have spent the last 20 years in. It would be amazing to work for an individual who cared for the entire crew, not just a few that are making him money. The entire crew. He cares as much about the people who cost him money as he does the people who make him money. Because there's all kinds of people that cost him money. The entire accounting department doesn't make him any money. Right? Well, that's a different story because you're sales and marketing.
True.
Don't discredit yourself on that. But all of those things cost him money. But he values everybody that works for him. And I understand that looking from the outside in. Like I kind of sound like I need to
over to his customers too.
Exactly. I sound like I need to be wearing knee pads right now, but I see it. Right? It's hard to come by those people. I'm in SDL every Sunday morning and I'm surrounded by 30 to 40, sometimes I think we almost had 40 plus on one of the Sundays. It's that leadership that trickles down. Because you get somebody who cares at the top and genuinely cares at the top and doesn't do like we talk about we talk about food all the time, and I had this discussion a little while ago, but food is important to a mechanic, especially free food. And you go into things like, sorry, pineapple belongs on people and I will die on that hill. But in a shop full of people, it doesn't matter whether you give them, a gift card to Amazon or pizza party or whatever the case may be, or whatever you call it. If that's not what the shop wants, that's not building culture. That's not building relationships. That's not showing empathy or anything else like that. You're not listening to your team. High value leaders know already. Like the last thing that Tyler's going to do, for example, if there was 10 of you or similar to you on the team, all doing similar things in your shop where you're rebuilding engines or you're rebuilding transmissions, rebuilding diffs, having that all ready for the training facility, and there's 10 just like you, meaning that you do CrossFit and you do athletics and you are on camera and you're taking care of what you look like and what you eat like. Is he going to put a whole pile of pizza in front of you? You'll probably eat it.
Absolutely, I'm going to fucking eat it.
You're a mechanic. You're absolutely going to eat it. It's free food. But are you, as an individual on that team, going to go, he knows I have a show in 2 weeks, right? He knows I'm going to go and lift literally for like 8 hours at an event, right? This is not on my prep. I'm still going to eat it. But it's not on my prep. Right? So
I get what you're trying to say. Yeah.
As someone who lifts, I'm lactose intolerant and I'm gluten intolerant. I'm still going to fucking eat the pizza. But I'm not going to think highly of my leader because he provided pizza. In fact, it's probably the opposite. You're going to start, it's like, does he actually know me? And I'm going to take that at an nth degree. My son in grade 1. Okay, we go in for parent-teacher interviews. And the teacher goes, he's having trouble with his dexterity. Like, oh? Yeah, he's not writing very well. We expect him to be a little bit better than he is, and he doesn't seem to be able to doing very well at any of the cutting out. And my wife goes, because my wife goes, does he have? Did you give him left-handed scissors? He's left-handed. The teacher, who's had my son in a front desk in her class for 6 weeks, had not recognized that this poor kid is left-handed.
Yeah.
That is a definition of a poor leader. That is what high-value leaders recognize.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really that's good story and like analogy there. We had I bring up Hanan a lot because I have a lot of good experiences with that company. But Mark Hanan himself always impressed me. Always. And there's a few reasons why. Reason one, he hired people underneath him to do their jobs, and for the most part, he trusted in them to do their jobs. He was not constantly trying to interfere with everybody's shit. If he hired you as a service manager, he trusted that you were going to be a service manager. And he, for the most part, was very good at hiring people for their roles. Number two, he remembered, I swear to God, this man had a photographic memory. He remembered every single you would have somebody walk in for a fucking interview and then walk out, and then here comes Mark Hahn, and he's like, so how did so-and-so do? And we're like, who the fuck is so-and-so? He's like, oh, the kid that just got interviewed. We're like, how the fuck did you know that? But he pays so much attention to the people in his company, even just little people, right? The mechanics. He used to make us lax. He made his kids hand us out donuts on Christmas. He made them walk around the shop and hand out everybody donuts. That was fucking awesome. But he did. And it wasn't just because your name was on your shirt. You'd be at a company event and he would know who you are. You'd see him out in public, he would know who you are. And he was such a humble person. Like, for an example, they sponsored the dirt bike races in Colorado, the Thunder Valley National Dirt Bike Races. More like they rented the equipment and the guys didn't really pay their bills. So to trade for that, they made an announcement about Hanan equipment, had the machines on display during the races, and gave a bunch of free employee tickets. So anybody that wanted to go to these dirt bike races, if you worked for Hanan, you could go. And I remember going to these races, and Mark Hanan equipment is on the motherfucking wristbands, right? This event is like his fucking event. And he's over there and he's talking to me and he talks to everybody in the tent and he asks he knows all the customers that are in the tent. Don't ask me how he knows them, but he does. Everybody. And we're walking out of the event and we're walking down the middle of the road and there's this cop like honking at us and telling us to get out of the middle of the road. They're like, you guys need to get out of the road, blah, blah, blah. It's like, dude, this is Mark Hanan. Hanan, its name's on the fucking wristband. But instead of going up to the cop and being like, dude, my name's on the fucking wristband. Okay? This is like, I'm a huge fucking sponsor of this event. Instead of doing that, he just, like a normal person, got out of the way and moved over to the side of the road and continued our conversation. And he was always like that. He was always he didn't have to push his power. He didn't have to push his weight around. He didn't have to constantly remind people who he was and what he did. And I'm the boss, And he protected me from a lot of, we had a lady when I first started there that wanted to spread my name and my face all over everything Hanan. For a girl mechanic, oh my God, let's spread her name all over everything and put her face on everything. And Mark told her go fuck herself because I'm sure that's not what he said, but he told her pretty much to go fuck herself, that I'm here to do a job and I'm here to learn and let me work and leave me alone. And that was a fucking blessing.
You bring up a really key point. This person, because you're a female mechanic, they want to bring you up and put your name everywhere and put your plaster anywhere. And I said this a while back, and I've been saying this for a long time. There is no gender in mechanic. There's no such thing. Personally, there is no female mechanic. There is no male mechanic. There is no she's, theys, whatever. You're a mechanic.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, it's just a job. It's like everything else.
I think it transcends that, to be honest, because it doesn't matter what's under your coveralls. You're going to get dirty. You're going to get covered in shit. You're going to get covered in ice and snow and salt and dirt and grime and people's shit and dirty diapers and whatever happens to be in, on, and around the car. You're still going to fix the fucking thing. You're going to still give it back the better than you got it. And you're going to make it safe so that people can drive and go on their day. It doesn't matter what's under the coveralls. There's no such thing as gender in mechanics. Car comes in, it gets fixed, it leaves.
I've always been a big advocate of there are shitty mechanics, there are average mechanics, and there are good mechanics. And there is no relevance to gender. And because I've had a lot, and I've ran across this personally, where I haven't really received any negative sexism. For the most part, I'm more than welcome in the shops. People are happy to help me. They're scared to talk to me for like at least a month, but still, like everybody's always supportive. The customers are happy to see me, especially the customers that get to know me. They know I'm there. They appreciate my work. They're happy to have me. I also was in Wyoming where women in the trades wasn't a weird thing. But I have I have not ran into the you're a shitty mechanic because you're a girl, besides the keyboard warriors, which they don't count. What I have ran into is people think that because I'm a woman, I am automatically a good mechanic. They have this mindset that they've been trained, right? Because they're scared to say anything sexist. So the men in this industry have almost been mentally trained to think that women are good mechanics, right?
That's not
Well,
actually the fucking
I guess the
case.
philosophy
You can
is
be
that,
a shit mechanic and be a woman.
well, absolutely, but I guess the philosophy is like it is in many industries that most women, whether it's, and I don't know any data to this regard. All I get is what's stuffed down my face by media and social media and news and so on and so forth. But the concept is that because there are so few of you folks in male-dominated industries, that you have to work extra hard, you have to be extra smart to do whatever or accomplish whatever.
That is,
and that's why I say
such bullshit. That is such bullshit.
I think it's bullshit, especially being a mechanic.
That's bullshit.
You're gonna be thrown in the trenches, regardless of what's under your coveralls. It doesn't matter. You're gonna be shoveling shit.
There's always people that ride. I have met men that everybody still rides a struggle bus sometimes, right? Like, I think that's such bullshit because everybody has to prove themselves. And I am so against using your gender as an excuse to get your way. Oh, I'm not proving myself, but I really want this engine work. I feel like I deserve to have engine work. So I'm going to go to my service manager and I'm going to claim sexism, and I'm going to say he's not giving me these jobs because I'm a woman to get these jobs. That's fucked up. I think everybody should be at the equal level playing field. And it is. For the most part, it is. The trades, especially when you look at big shops, they care about numbers, performance. You know, they don't give a fuck if you're a woman or a guy. If you're performing well, you're performing well. If you're not, you're not. You can't use, and I've seen men do this too, you know, find excuses as to why they're not performing well or make up excuses or whatever. But I can't stand people that pull the gender card to get their way. I'm not saying there aren't situations where that's appropriate because maybe there is some negative sexism going on, but I've always been an advocate that I wanted this to be treated like I'm one of the guys. I want to be treated the exact same way as everybody else. The only thing I want different is my own fucking bathroom. That is all I fucking want. I will wear their jeans. I will wear their shirts. I will do any job that they do. Well, I mean, for the most part, all the shops I work at, there's office ladies that have their own bathroom anyways. But it's like, that's the only thing that I've ever asked for specifically is, you know, can I have my own fucking bathroom? And for the most part, all they do is put lockers in the girls' bathroom, which I'm totally fucking fine with. I'm cool with that. I'm not high fucking maintenance at all. But over the years, I gained a lot of respect from that. But I've had to start approaching new employers in the manner of making a point to tell them, hey, I am not going to be an HR nightmare. If I have a problem with somebody in the shop, which is a rare occurrence, it's what I always tell them, because it is, if on the rare occurrence I have a problem with somebody in the shop, I'm going to bring that to you. If you and I cannot solve it, I don't need to work here. HR does not need to be involved. No one needs to lose their job. I'm not selfish like that. I can go find another job. Maybe this isn't the shop for me.
And that may very well be a female thing, because whether it's a female thing or not, I don't think it's relevant, because at the end of the day, every person in that shop should be like that. If I can't resolve, and this is conflict resolution, and we're having difficulty with my son, who's having difficulty resolving conflict at school because for 2.5 years, he hasn't had to deal with people contact. He hasn't had to deal with children his age. So he doesn't know how to react. He doesn't know how to respond. Even though the kid's got a probationary black belt in Taekwondo, it doesn't matter. He's not allowed to use it. And as confident as a 9-year-old can possibly be, he doesn't know how to be confident and deal with conflict. Well, it doesn't matter what gender you are. You need to learn how to resolve conflict, and you need to do it person to person. It should not necessarily come to fists. Now, I have my own inequities when it comes to that, because there are certain things that should, for the most part, we're men. At some point, in all likelihood, there's going to be a fist thrown at some point, if it gets that point, or at least the threat of it needs to be present, because you need to stand the fuck up. But at the same time, you shouldn't need to ever have HR. HR gets involved when you can't resolve the conflict like adults.
Yeah. And at that point, it's probably not the shop you need to work in.
Exactly.
Like,
It's always been my take on it. Because, well, you know, there's been plenty of stories of, you know, girls, so-and-so looked at me wrong, so I'm going to go report it to HR. Or, you know, I don't feel like my service manager is giving me the jobs I want because I'm a woman, so I'm going to go to HR. And I can't. And that's a rarity, by the way, with women in this industry. Most of the women in this industry, we're pretty tough people. We're pretty strong personalities that don't, like, we can handle our own pretty fucking fine. Right?
but on a rare occasion,
I don't think it's gender related. I don't think it's gender related. I think it's personality related, because I can tell you right now, there are answers on a survey. There are answers on a survey right now that say, I need to delegate the work better. You need to stop the gravy feeding. Well, I need to figure out, using the data from the survey, whether gravy feeding is something that comes up consistently in some of the answers. Well, if you're in a 25-person shop and 20 people are saying people are being fed gravy and 5 people aren't, in all likelihood, the 5 people that haven't said anything are the people being fed.
Yeah.
But if only one person is saying people are being fed gravy or this or that or whatever, or they're not giving me work, this or that or the other, has nothing necessarily to do with gender and everything to do with how the dispatching is being done. Well, maybe these people are high producers and they get the work done and they don't complain and they're trained and they're certified and the customers are happy to see them and they've built up, you know, maybe they have 10 or 15 years of experience at that store and have built a rapport with the customers, and that's why they're being fed work, because the customers are coming and said, hey, I want Joe to work on my car and only Joe to work on my car. Or they're coming in and say, hey, they only want Melissa to work. Nobody else is touching my car except Melissa, period, end of chat. And then without context, the rest of the mechanics in the shop are going, they're being fed gravy. Well, if Melissa has worked on that car randomly twice in a row, and that customer has now realized that Melissa's been on the work car twice in a row, and every time the car went in, it came out fixed the first time, a rapport is built. And then now there's a trend, and now the customer wants to see Melissa every single time. Well, not everybody knows that. Well, it's awfully hard to communicate that. But that's up to the service leader. You need to understand that. You need to know your team. The rest of the team needs to stop. And this is where I'm trying to combat both sides of the coin, right? Because service leaders have a lot of responsibility on their shoulders. If you've got a shop of 20, you've got the lives of 20 families in your hands, right? That is what they do. They have the lives and well-being of 20 people in their hands. And it's a big responsibility to know that much responsibility is on your shoulders. But they also need to communicate. And they have all the responsibility of training and all the responsibility of all the mentorship and trying to delegate all that and the service advisors and blah, 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 blah. It's up to us mechanics to make sure that we're treating each other like human beings. Like we are just as accountable for our own training as the service leader is. We are just as accountable for our well-being in the shop and how we act in the shop as a service leader is. If you're an asshole, you're responsible for that.
Yeah.
If nobody wants to work with you or help you when you're doing a hard job and you want to get it done so you can go home and nobody wants to help you, you're the asshole. Not the rest of the people in the shop. You need to hold yourself accountable.
I agree with that. I agree with that completely. You know, I've met, you know, I would put myself on a slightly above average scale as far as mechanicking goes, because I still have my struggles. I really do. And after 7 years, I feel like I've just barely scraped the surface of the knowledge I can have and the potential that I have. And I think that's with everybody, you know, potential comes, there's a lot of years. It takes a lot of years to learn this. But I've met 10-year mechanics that have no idea what CAN bus is. Not a fucking clue.
And no desire to learn it either.
Yeah, and I've met 10-year mechanics that are still fine with having their handheld. I've always been the type of person that I was independent to a fault, I guess. Like, it took me a long time to figure out that it's okay, like, exhaust all your resources, right? Don't just be the person that, like, the second you can't figure something out, go ask for help. Like, exhaust all your resources and then ask for help. It's okay. Everybody needs help sometimes, and it took me a long time to reach that stage. And I was always really, really hard on myself when I fucked something up. I was always really hard on myself. At one point, I fucked something up. It was a backhoe transmission. And I fucked it up. And I was being so hard on myself about it. My boss walked out. He looked at me and he's like, well, I was going to shoot your ass for this, but it looks like you're already cheering your ass harder than I would have. So I'm just going to let you continue to beat yourself up over this. And I'm going to go back to my office. Just don't let it last more than 10 minutes and then get back to work. But that's just how it was, because I was so fucking hard on myself because I wanted so bad to be the best. I wanted that so bad. And that is just fucking missing from a lot of mechanics. They don't care. Or they already think that they are up here and they don't think. I've told this story before where I've gone to a capstone training for graders, and I wasn't even a year in. And I went to this capstone training knowing I'd touched a grand total of 2 graders, and I didn't know what the fuck was going on. There's a lot of moving shit going on. I'm new to equipment. I'm new to this. I don't know what the fuck. I went into that training knowing that I needed to learn. And I fucking smoked everybody in that class as far as grades. And, you know, there's a couple that were close to me, but the one particular man was an older gentleman, and he spent the entire time boasting about how I know everything there is to know about graders. I've been working on graders for 20 years. You know I don't fucking need to be here, blah, blah, blah. He hardly passed. He got his ass fucking kicked horribly bad by a 19-year-old girl with less than a year of experience. But it's not about, like, is he probably a better mechanic than me at the time? Absolutely. But it's about your attitude going into things. If you go into things with the attitude of, like, I want to learn, there's a lot here to be offered, I want to learn, and I want to do good, you're going to go a lot farther than the other people that think they already know everything.
What's that phrase? If you want to go far, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that applies to learning, that applies to life, that applies to so many things, especially in mechanics, because yes, you can do most things alone. What we do every day doesn't matter whether you're on your back or you're on a hoist or you're under a crane lifting up something several tons. Some shit you really shouldn't be doing alone, because it really fucking isn't safe to do alone. Because all it takes, you can end your life so fast on so many things, touching too many things that you shouldn't at the same fucking time. It just needs another set of hands. Hey, don't touch that. That saves your life.
Well, and it's down to even, like, really simple things. Like, you know, I learned this lesson is if it takes you 2 hours to line up fucking pins in an excavator coupler to the stick because you gotta fucking get out, move it, try to push the pin in, get out, move it, if It's going to take you fucking 2 hours to do that by yourself, or it's going to take 15 minutes to get the technician next to you to run the machine while you line it up. Even if he clocks onto your job, that's 30 minutes worth of build time versus 2 hours of your time. You know, and the team, that's where you were talking about, like, the team dynamic of a shop comes into play, because if you've got a good group of mechanics that obviously there's not like a heavy dependency, but there's enough independency and dependency of a mixture that they know what they can do by themselves, and they understand what's more efficient to do by themselves, but they also understand where having help is the right answer. That flows so much better. And having that team atmosphere in a shop is so fucking it's so much better than having every mechanic's there for themselves, every mechanic's out for themselves. You know, because if you can work together on things, every mechanic looks at things a little bit differently. Every mechanic does their job a little bit differently. So when you have a group of mechanics that can work together and create and have all of those be pretty much everybody's strong suits, then you have a really efficient team. And you probably have a happy shop because they probably get along well. And they're working together and they're solving problems and they're getting work out the door. Shop atmosphere is freaking huge. And I don't think service managers all the time understand that.
Oh, and in every show and everything that I'm a part of, I try to somehow work my way in some form of movie quote or some form of movie reference. So I'm going to reference 300.
I love that movie.
And Spartans, if you love that movie, you already probably know what I'm going to say or what I'm going to talk about. But Spartans were so successful in real life, like back in the day when Spartans were Spartans, when that actually existed and happened. In the movie, they say a couple of very simple things that make a lot of sense in teams. Spartans weren't necessarily successful because they were literally bred to be warriors. They were literally bred to be leaders and how to use and train from, I think, the age of 6 or something like that. They weren't successful because of that. They were successful because the man to their left protected them from thigh to neck.
Yeah.
Period. If nothing else happened, they had their brother to the left. That's why I preach in this trade, especially, and you don't get this when you're out in the field necessarily, but you definitely get it when you're in a shop. Your baymate is the single most important person in your day, because when you can't fix something, you can bounce ideas off. If you need to stop and decompress because you're banging your head against a concrete wall, you go outside and you have a smoke. If you can't fix something, you need help, you ask them questions. And when you go home at night, it's somebody to bitch, whine, and complain and vent to, so that tomorrow when you get back to work, you're having shared experiences. You have shared learning. You have someone who holds you accountable to your bullshit every day. You have somebody to lift you up when you come in and, she broke up with me last night. It's like, okay, let's get through this job and tonight we'll go out for beers. Whatever the case may be, that baymate and that environment is vital for a mechanic's success, I believe.
Well, and there's a lot of bouncing off that. A lot of people refer to a shop as a family. It's a family atmosphere. A lot of people, a lot of mechanics. You spend 10 hours a day with those people.
Do you agree with the family or not?
It depends on the shop.
There's some shops where everybody's friends with each other. They go out and do group stuff together. They go to events together. And it's sort of like a family dynamic that you always have each other's back. You've got the best interests at heart and everybody's putting in their efforts. And then there's other shops where it's like, if this is a family, this is one dysfunctional motherfucking family. Like,
it almost always is, isn't it?
Yeah. But you spend a lot of fucking time with these people. A lot of time. Some people spend more waking hours with their coworkers than they do with their own fucking family.
If you spend more time at work than you do with your loved ones, and the environment you're in all day is toxic.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Cool. Good.
And I'm
I'm
really
going
happy to hear
to-
what you're doing. I'm really happy
I'm
to hear what
trying.
you're doing because you're doing.
You can
because
thank
you're-
Tyler for that.
I will. I absolutely will. And thank you for it because there needs to be more of us.
We're
There
trying.
absolutely needs to be more of us from every aspect, from every corner, because there's almost 1 million of us in North America alone. I can't talk to everybody. You can't talk to everybody. There's more than enough to go around for everybody to get a piece and help.
Yeah.
So thank you for what you're doing. I truly, genuinely appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome. I'm trying. I'm not even close to what you're doing, but a lot of my shit's just trying to understand the problem with why people aren't getting into this industry, which I know what it is, obviously. I know a lot of the reasoning as to why, but this is not an evil industry. And this industry, there's so much pride in your job. This is one of the most fulfilling jobs you can ever have. To me, being a mechanic was very fulfilling. And, the best fucking feeling in the motherfucking world was when you finished a big job and you rolled that thing out of the shop and washed it up and cleaned it up and buttoned it up and it was all pretty and it ran perfect and that customer took it and had a smile on their face. That was like the best fucking thing ever. And, people have this really skewed image of what they don't see that. They don't see the good things. And sometimes toxic shops can ruin the entire point of being a mechanic. All the joys of being a mechanic, right? And at some point, mechanics get beaten down to the point where they just fucking leave the industry, which is sad because at one point in time, they loved what they did.
Exactly. We had to get it. All of us had to get in for a reason, and everybody's got a reason why they left. So it's up to you and I and Tyler and a select few that have taken up the torch to try and help people stay, improve the industry enough so that people stay, improve the industry enough so more people come, and improve the industry even more so that even more people come and more people stay. Improve their lives, help them make more money, help them be happy with their families, help them be happy at work.